Okay, we got one person. That's enough. All right. The Tuskegee Airman and the Kybalion. Years ago, when I first started personal training, this was like 2004. I started in 2003. 2004, I think I had quit my job as a trainer at the gym, at the big gym that I started at, and I started going on my own, independent. Okay, so I went and picked up a little part-time job in Fort Worth at a place called McDonald's YMCA. Now this was on the east side of Fort Worth. This was a predominantly black part of town. So all of the people that I dealt with there were black people, and these were like elderly black people. So my job was to go over and just help them while they were in the gym if they had questions, and show them little movements that they could do that would help their joints and different things, and just basically to slow down the natural degeneration of aging. Okay, so older people have always, for the most part, taken a liking to me, and I guess what people have always said, told me I got an old soul. That's something people used to say back in the day. That child done been here before. So there's this innate knowing that has always been there, that there's a possibility of people recycling down to the planet. So I always, have had a good relationships with older people. So this one particular man in there took a liking to me, Mr. Pratt. And Mr. Pratt started telling me a story one day. We're sitting there talking. I always love to hear older people tell stories. I've always, since I was a child. Other children just weren't interested and wanted to run off. And, I always enjoyed sitting, listening to old people, to the grown people talk. Not because I thought I was grown, it's because I could understand what they were talking about. Real talk. Even when I grew up and went to church, I really listened to the sermons. I wasn't trying to be no devout, what I had no agenda. But I literally wanted to hear what the man or woman had to say, and I would make a determination in my own mind whether this person actually could get down. This was as a young child, 7, 8 years old. So I've always enjoyed, things to stimulate my mind, and normally older people had more other things to talk about that I wanted to know about. So Mr. Pratt and let me tell you how it's funny how a person can tell you something and they're not trying to be deep. They're not trying to be intellectual. They're not trying to change your life. This man was just telling me a story. And this happened some 14 years ago. And it's not until the other day that it really hit me, the power of what he was telling me. He was just telling me a story. So Mr. Pratt was a Tuskegee Airman. Okay? And he passed away a few years ago, and they had a big thing on it on the news and so forth. Man, I don't want to go this way. But he was a Tuskegee Airman. So one day we're in the gym, and Mr. Pratt starts telling me a story about how back during the World War II era, there was another pilot who, when they were I think it was training, and they had to skydive from a plane and pull their parachute. And man, this is just crazy how this man told us. And when you know somebody's not lying. Mr. Pratt told me that one of his fellow soldiers had dived from the plane and was trying to pull his parachute. Oh man, pull my earpiece out. And he just kept tearing, trying to pull the parachute. And guess what? He was pulling from the wrong side. The parachute, the pull line was over here. And he said they were down there on the ground watching, and I'm sure they could see the terror. And I'm sure it was terrorizing for them to watch this. And he's saying this guy kept pulling, and he said he was so frantic that by the time he hit the ground, he had torn through his uniform, flight jacket and all of that, and had torn through his skin. So frantic trying to pull that line. Because it's like you only got, couple of seconds? And all the time, the pull line was on the other side. All we had to do was go to the other side and work. Now, the other day it hit me, the beauty of it. This is like a Sufi story right here. If you read Sufi stories, this is like the equivalent of, this is a perfect Sufi story. Simple, but profound. Two things I thought about is, one, he panicked. He panicked. And he wasn't thinking. This is not to judge. This is, things are told to us for us to contemplate. You're supposed to discuss people's failures and people's mistakes, but not from a state of judgment, but from a state of studying. When you play a sport and you go back after a game, you're going to go back and have a film session. And basically the film session is to highlight, some good plays if they happen, but mostly it is to identify the mistakes that were made. Namely your mistakes as a player, so you can improve. So we go back and look at some of these things, not to judge, but to see, what is the lesson that we can get out of it? He panicked. The brother panicked and forgot all of his training. All of his training had taught him where the pull cord was. He forgot it. But even deeper than that is, I said to myself, this is a perfect story to explain, I think, one of the most transformative books you can ever have. Like, when you get to where I'm at in my journey, I'm starting to sift things. I don't regret any of the vast amount of books I've collected and the stuff I've read, because they're all great references. But when you get to this point in life, you're trying to figure out, what if I can tell somebody, what is the most transformative things I can tell them to share as I look back. The Kybalion, which you heard C. Freeman L. talk about, which you heard me talk about, which you heard Bobby Hemmitt talk, tons of people talk about. The Kybalion. You have got to have you a Kybalion, and you need to study it. Not try to read it to finish it, but you need to read, come back and read it, come back and refer to it for the rest of your life, because you're going to learn other things, but you're going to always find that they all come back to that Kybalion. That Kybalion is 7 principles that talk about overcoming duality. Duality. And I was doing some looking around the other day and stumbled across one of the books that's rarely mentioned when you talk about Gnostic works, and it's the Book of Baruch. And in the commentary, it's talking about how, the Book of Baruch is showing that there's at the highest, next to the highest level, are 2 counter forces that are basically dueling. And then they say that beyond that is called the good. Okay? And basically these 2 counter forces form your gateway. And that's just your Yakim and Boaz on your tree of life. And it's the same basic mother father principle of 2 things that appear to be opposites. A reconciliation that comes out of it. So when Mr. Pratt told me the story about the man who was pulling from the wrong side, of course it was just an amazing story to me at the time, 14 years ago. But as I go back and reflect on that, I'm reflecting on things. I'm thinking about how subtle and how simple the truth really, really is. I'm trying to tell you. It comes with no bells and no whistles. It just is what it is. And some of the greatest lessons you will learn across the board will come from people who are not really trying to teach you nothing about, what you're going to pull from it. That's how innocent your journey is. Your journey is going to lead you to things even when you don't even know you. That is the never-ending story. That is the great mythos. That's the heroine's journey. It is you being innocently just going along and pursuing where you're at the moment. You don't even know that you're in this position most times until you go back and look and reflect on things, and until you get to a certain place of awareness where you start paying attention to where you are at different points in your life. See, you're talking about being conscious and unconscious. Unconscious is you are not aware. You're not aware of these different positions you're moving into. You're not aware that you're going through a transformation, a mutation. You're not aware, but as that awareness heightens, then it's like, man, now I see that, I see things shifting, I see moving. So I know, and now I have an understanding to go along. So now I can move accordingly with the flow of the energy. So duality is a beautiful teaching tool that is teaching you. The teacher never teaches you to stay where you're at. The teacher teaches you to go beyond. My mother was a first grade teacher, and one of her number one jobs was to prepare students to be second graders. Hey, it's Brother Jamal, mastersofthecosmos.com. Thanks for joining in. As always, reminding you to stay down till you get up, and when you get up, stay down. Balance. Peace.